Okay. Dang, that was the quickest online that I've ever seen. Are we live yet? I think. We're live, lady. I think, yeah. Oh, we are live. All right. So, hey guys, give me 1 second here. We'll get started on the How the Frack We Got Here podcast as soon as I make some necessary adjustments. Aside from that, should be an interesting show as far as what we're going to get into. So just give me just 1 second to make some necessary adjustments. And with that being said, and okay, I think I got everything up to par. At least I hope I did. Nope, not yet. And okay, now we're good. All right, so sorry about that, guys. Let's get into it. Today's date, May the 11th, 2019, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take last week's events and also try to make sense out of it all, as we do on this before Mother's Day weekend. So, you know, if you still have your mom around, if you're still scrambling for gifts, there's always Walmart. All right, so aside from that, guys, do guys say this is an adult podcast, which means that language of an adult nature may be used, as well as things that may be shown may be of viewer discretion advised. So please make the necessary adjustments before we begin. And like most days, I do begin with how did Trump fuck up today? Well, unfortunately, he did. Well, let's just start with this because this is probably going to be the easiest thing I can show.
Flag of Guatemala and Honduras and El Salvador right into our border. Save that flag. We love our country. We love our country, but we're afraid of it. For purposes of getting into the United States, we're afraid of our country. And the wall would help because it would not help. The wall would stop it. Okay? The wall would stop it. I mean, when you have 15,000 people marching up and you have hundreds and hundreds of people and you have 2 or 3 border security people that are brave and great. And don't forget, we don't let them, and we can't let them use weapons. We can't. Other countries do. We can't. I would never do that. But how do you stop these people? You can't. There's no... That's only in the panhandle you can get away with that statement. Only in the panhandle.
Yes, only in the panhandle can one of your supporters sit there and say, how do we deal with immigrants, and say, shoot them, and you laugh. You, as the President of the United States, laugh at a comment made about shooting immigrants in Florida, and you say, only in the panhandle state. Yeah, that's saying a lot, and that's saying just enough of how you know our president, unfortunately, Agent Orange, is that much of a dick that he could sit there and not only say that, but apparently he also says this on the very same day.
Democrats in Congress to work with us to pass an acceptable bill. We're getting close. It's pretty tough dealing with. They don't want to build a wall, but we're building the wall. They don't want to do a lot of other things. They don't want to do a lot of things. Instead of wasting time, energy, taxpayer dollars on partisan stunts and hoaxes and witch hunts, Democrats should be focused on building up our country. Did you see what just happened, by the way? No collusion, no obstruction, no anything. 2 years on a witch hunt. I could have gotten anybody in this audience. I could have found something on you. 2 years. Almost $40 million. 20 Trump haters, Democrats. I call them angry Democrats. After 2 years, nothing. No collusion. And now the Democrats, we have a great attorney general. Now the Democrats are saying, we want more. You know, it was going to be like, we want the Mueller report. Now they say, Mueller report? No, we want to start all over again. It is a disgrace. We got to focus on infrastructure. We have to focus on lowering medical prices and medicine. Always focus on our military and our vets, which we've done. And the Democrats really should be focused now on restoring and helping the Emerald Coast of Florida, because that's what it is. It's time to come together.
Now, I'm sorry. As I watched it, I'm like, is it the 2016 election all over again? He's basically saying the same shit he said during the campaign, with some vast differences. You know, there's no collusion, although the Mueller report investigation did have over 19 indictments, 33 arrests, and now almost 9 people in prison. So, you know, there's that. There's also the big-ass smoking gun that later this week that it's actually now 729 former federal prosecutors are all signing the affidavit saying if it was anybody else, regarding this redacted report, that they would bring up multiple crimes of obstruction of justice against the president. And also, there's another thing I did want to get clear out the way that a lot of people don't understand. The sitting president can be indicted. It's not a law. It's a policy that the Department of Justice has. Unfortunately, the Department of Justice is unfortunately ran by William Barr. And, of course, Barr is a Trump appointee. And like every other appointee that Trump has, they are basically put in place to protect him. In the same sense that when they say you can't indict a sitting president, yes, you can. Because how did you get Nixon? Nixon resigned before they can get him for Watergate. You can indict a president. But again, he talks about the economy like he has nothing to do with it when his GOP plan that they had put in place, which basically gave tax cuts to the top percent and basically cut off all funding and beneficials from the lower classes, has now been in effect. And yet at the same time, he talks about lowering drug prescription costs when he has not implemented a plan, but he wants to repeal Obamacare. Again, it's like 2019 Trump has decided to come with 2016 Trump and try to make us forget that he has been president for the last 3 years. I can't be the only other guy that sees this. And on top of that, there's another story. Of course, what I said about him and the wall, the Pentagon is now diverting another $1.5 billion to the wall. Now, the reason why the Pentagon can do that is because Trump had declared a national emergency. Now, I did talk about that on the podcast a ways back. National emergencies can only be declared and approved by Congress, which means he would have to have bipartisan support from the House as well as the Senate. However, he didn't get it. The problem was that the Pentagon, mostly the Joint Chiefs of Staff, can go ahead and allocate funds to the president, basically superseding Congress and giving him exactly what he wants. Unfortunately, he's about $89.5 billion short of the wall he wants, which is, ironically enough, he only wants a wall that blocks Mexico and yet not from Canada or from the Pacific or Atlantic Oceans. Figure that one out. But it's amazing to me that the Pentagon, again, is now getting unlimited funding. Keep in mind, the Pentagon does make up 45% of our total budget as a country. We really shouldn't be surprised that the Pentagon, who at this point cannot account for $1 trillion in the last 20 years, because keep in mind, more than $1 trillion got allocated to the Pentagon, they cannot account for it. That alone should tell you everything, that the simple fact of the matter is that they're getting more money. And since they have so much money and Trump's basically helping out with them, they'll kick that back. And as much they'll try to sit there and say it's for the wall, unfortunately that $1.5 billion only covers 90 square miles, which is a little short of the 2,000 plus miles that's actually the border between U.S. and Mexico. Good luck with that. Aside from that, like I said, it's kind of been a Trump issue, Trump week. Again, when you really get tired, I mean, I know a lot of people will say, well, we're tired of the Mueller report, we're tired of this, and you shouldn't be, because they are being so blatant about how they're going about it that they're actually doing stuff like this.
Personal attorney Rudy Giuliani under fire for his plan to travel to Ukraine and actively push for investigations that could help the president's reelection. He wants Ukraine to provide information that could hurt Vice President Joe Biden. Here's ABC's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, in a bizarre move, Rudy Giuliani, the president's personal lawyer, says he's seeking help from Ukraine to politically hurt Joe Biden, Trump's top 2020 rival.
I guarantee you, Joe Biden will not get to Election Day without this being investigated.
As first reported by the New York Times, Giuliani says he'll travel to Ukraine and ask its government to dig up information about actions Biden may have taken as vice president, and is urging Ukraine to look into the origins of the special counsel's Russia investigation. Giuliani says that information will be very, very helpful to my client and may turn out to be helpful to my government. But he insists we're not meddling in an election, we're meddling in an investigation, which we have a right to do. But Democrats are furious.
Here you have the president's lawyer seeking help from a foreign government, again, to influence an American presidential election. I mean, it's just appalling.
Giuliani has defended the Trump campaign's willingness in 2016 to accept help from the Russians.
There's nothing wrong with taking information from Russians.
Now, Giuliani says there's nothing illegal about seeking help from Ukraine, but admits somebody could say it's improper. Asked if the president is aware, Giuliani told The Times he basically knows what I'm doing, sure, as his lawyer.
All right, Mary Bruce joins us now from Washington. Mary, on that last point in your story, again, Rudy Giuliani says President Trump knows what he's doing in Ukraine?
Yes, but Tom, tonight the Trump campaign is distancing itself from all of this. They say they are not affiliated at all with these Ukrainian investigations and that Rudy Giuliani is a private citizen. But Tom, he is also, of course, the president's personal lawyer. Now,
I'm going to pretty much cut it short there because I want to make one point that just seems to be, it's so interesting how he sat there and said, I have the approval of the president to go to the Ukraine and ask them to investigate the Russia investigation. Think about that for a few moments. He is the personal attorney for President Cheeto, and he just now spoke for President Cheeto, which now his own press team is saying that, well, he didn't say that. Sound familiar? Michael Cohen also sat there and said, I did exactly what Trump wanted me to do. And amazingly enough, they distanced themselves from him. Coincidence? I mean, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, then quack, quack. And again, this is all leading to exactly where it should go. There should be more scrutiny on the president. There should be more scrutiny on the Mueller report, and that those who are basically invested in this or associated with the president should be investigated and testified without the president exerting executive privilege, which unfortunately he does not know how that works because he tried to do the same thing to his former attorney like this guy.
As CBS News has confirmed, the White House asked former White House counsel Don McGahn to publicly state President Trump did not obstruct justice. That's according to multiple reports. The White House asked McGahn twice in the past month after the release of the special counsel Robert Mueller's report. Well, McGahn declined the requests from the president's attorneys. An attorney for McGahn said that they did not perceive the request as a threat or something sinister. The special counsel's report revealed McGahn told them the president instructed him to fire Mueller. Mr. Trump denies that, saying that he could have done it himself. There's heightened.
Sorry about that, guys. CBS got faster than I did. So again, Doug McCann, as you just saw, who was the former attorney for our President Cheeto. And again, I can only point out the similarities here. That basically the White House had sat there and told this man that he did not obstruct justice. He is telling them to tell a council person that was associated with Trump to tell the Department of Justice and those that were investigating that Trump did not obstruct justice. I can't be the only guy that sits there and goes, I think we kind of need to look into this fool. Because the simple fact of the matter is you now have 3 now former attorneys, one who is now in jail, one who is not going to Ukraine because now it looks suspect, one who was a former attorney who was being told by his previous client to basically say I didn't do it. You couldn't write a better Godfather novel than Scorsese himself in this. So again, there is so much smoke surrounding this exact man that either Snoop Dogg and Willie Nelson are next to a fan right now, or the simple fact of the matter is he is exactly the con man that we know him to be. And the funny part is, That wasn't the only story. It just seems to be steady more getting worse and worse because this actual story just came out not too long ago.
He can't make the interest payments on his loans. On June 15th, he missed a $43 million payment on junk bonds that he had sold to finance the Trump Castle casino. Most of Trump's bankers are prepared to loan him more money to tide him over, but only if he agrees to cut back on his lifestyle, sell some of his properties, and install watchdogs from the banks inside his company. Trump is willing, but a few banks have refused to go along with the deal. Meantime, Trump is getting very little sympathy.
It's his own fault. He has no one to blame but himself.
Welcome back to AM Joy. Well, the signs were all there in 1990 that Donald Trump was, to put it charitably, not a good businessman. But if you only paid attention to the tabloids, the magazine covers, and the fawning media coverage, Trump was the picture of wealth, a real winner. It was that brand that ultimately got him into the White House. But in reality, Donald Trump wasn't even close to being a winner. Indeed, Trump was the biggest loser. And that became clearer this week with a massive scoop, the New York Times, on Trump's taxes during the very period when he was building his brand. The Times reporters obtained printouts from Trump's official IRS tax transcripts for a decade in the 80s and 90s. They show Trump's businesses losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, totaling more than $1 billion in losses for the decade. The Times notes that year after year, Trump lost more money than nearly any other individual American taxpayer, literally making him the biggest money loser in America. And he avoided paying income taxes for 8 of those 10 years. And yet, Trump was out there peddling the lie that he had the Midas touch. He even had the audacity to show up in Congress in 1991 at a time when he was about $1 billion in the red, calling for changes in the tax code that would benefit the real estate industry.
And I'm pretty much going to end it there because, like I said, it actually goes into a lot more. But I wanted to play the first part just because of the fact of the matter that, yes, the New York Times earlier this week did actually release a story to where they were able to get a hold of his tax returns from that time period, as Joy Reid said, of when he was building his brand. He was already in the red. And at that point, because I had to do some research, that was the first of 11 times he has filed for bankruptcy. He actually filed for bankruptcy. His first filing for bankruptcy was back in 1992 when his Trump casino was going under. Because keep in mind, for him to be such a great businessman, mind you, filed for bankruptcy 11 times. Didn't pay income taxes for 8 of the 10 years when they were looking into that. He did not pay income taxes. You gotta think, guys like you and me who are probably under the $45,000 to $50,000 crap, I can't find the words I want to say. If you were under the $40,000 or $50,000 salary and you pay taxes, and to think that guy, as you saw from the chart, he lost close to $1 million. He lost. Really, combined wise, his actual, if you really want to be honest with you, because Mark Zuckerberg's net worth at $915 million was when Facebook was starting to get bigger than MySpace. So Mark Zuckerberg's initial wealth of $900 million was kind of equal to how much Trump lost, in addition to multi-millions over 10 years. That alone should tell you that the man is a con man. Not only is the man a con man, he literally and figuratively is defiant, and it kills me where it's defiant. And I'm sorry, guys, I must have said, oh, hey, Derek, what's going on? Traders, yeah, it is traders. There are traders. Now, the reality is he's broke and pulling wool over everybody's eyes. Of course. Where's Dave Ramsey when you need him? Supporting Trump. He's a Trump supporter. He actually does support the president. He actually sat there and called the president on multiple times on his podcast a very smart businessman. And again, Dave Ramsey himself has filed for bankruptcy multiple times. So kind of puts him in the same boat. But it is amazing to me how defiant the Trump campaign truly is. For example, as the House, which is basically mostly ran by Democrats, are issuing subpoenas, we basically get the latest one, which is Trump's doing it again.
Just responded to House Democrats their demand to see the president's tax returns. Let's go to CNN's Lauren Fox. Lauren, what are you hearing?
Well, we just heard from Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin that he will not fulfill that request for 6 years of the president's business and personal tax returns. That request coming from House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Richard Neal, who had requested this information using an IRS section known as 6103 that he said gave his committee the power to ask for this information. This is, of course, breaking news and escalating this fight for the president's personal and business tax return information. Now, Richard Neal has a few options. He can basically sue, go right ahead and say that the Treasury Department is not fulfilling their legal obligation for this information, or he could file a subpoena on top of that and then go to court that way. So those are a couple of the options. We have not heard yet from Richard Neal, this request being denied just moments ago. Wolf?
And it's not a surprise, Lauren. We never anticipated that Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, would go ahead and do this. So I assume the Democrats, Richard Neal and the House Ways and Means Committee and other Democratic leaders, including the Speaker, they have a game plan in mind to take immediate action.
Well, absolutely, Wolf. You know, from the very beginning, Richard Neal has been clear that he's been building and preparing for a court case. He never expected this to come easily. Back when I interviewed him in November, he said that this was all about going slowly, being careful, being deliberate, making sure that all the ducks were in line for when the inevitable court case came to be. And obviously, it seems like we're moving forward with that sooner than later. Wolf?
Now, the interesting thing about that is, of course, with the Ways and Means Committee, which a lot of people don't know, is that I thought was going to be Maxine Waters, but unfortunately, it's not her. But basically, anyone who is ahead of the Ways and Means community, you have one very special ability that is paramount to situations like this. You can request the tax returns of any U.S. citizen, and they have to give it to you. It's actually in the Constitution. Our Ways and whoever is the head of the Ways and Means Committee can request tax returns on anyone. Presidents are not excluded. Now, here's the problem. Steve Mnuchin, again, who is the head of the IRS? Not the IRS. Well, head of the Treasury, which might as well be the IRS. But again, him being the head of the Treasury can railroad anything, but he cannot turn down an order from the Ways and Means community. So, technically, they are correct. They could actually sue and bring it up to federal court, in which the Constitution would follow the rights of the Democrats, and Mnuchin would have to be irrevocably forced to give it up. I personally believe in the fact of the matter is, we have a sergeant at arms. Why are we not using that guy? Because at this point, it seems the administration, the Cheeto administration, I refuse to call the Trump administration, the Cheeto administration is literally being so defiant, even though they're not understanding what they're defiant about. Because Trump said he releases tax returns, and a lot of people who actually believed him during his election said he would. He is now almost into his full first term as a president. He has yet to release shit. He also sat there and said he's a great businessman, and the next story about the tariffs will show differently. And we shouldn't be surprised because of him and Mitch McConnell putting in people that he appointed whose sole job is to protect his tax returns, to protect the unredacted Mueller report from being put out, tells you off the bat that there is something in the water that you should be concerned about when you have these very few people who are in positions of power who are preventing this information from being put out. Should tell you off the bat that there is something there, and like most tax frauds, first rule of a tax fraud: follow the money. And speaking of money, I do have to say that we're going to actually get into the trade war, I should say, with U.S. and China, because if you're a vendor who basically gets their shit from overseas, this is probably going to alarm you.
I happen to think that tariffs for a country are very powerful.
But to many Americans, it means a price hike, potentially, on everything from soap to screwdrivers, sneakers to smartphones. That's because the overnight move raises tariffs from 10% to 25% on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. That could affect some 6,000 items, not just big ticket buys like cars and washing machines, but staples at your big box and hardware stores, since so much of what we buy here comes from there. It even includes groceries like fruit, nuts, and fish.
It's just frustrating because you just know that most politicians aren't familiar with what it's like to live every day, in the middle class.
You have to juggle what you can afford and what you can't afford. And a lot of people can't even do that.
Take an average family of 4. One trade group estimates the tariffs could cost them an extra $767 per year. Why? Because companies now have to pay more for what they import from overseas, a cost that can get passed to you. That's what's happening with Arnold Kamler, who owns this bicycle shop in South Carolina and gets his parts mostly from China. Already, he's had to hike prices about $20 a bike.
We don't know how we perceive that China is paying for this. We're paying for it, and it's being passed on to our customers.
The White House has argued a tough stance will ultimately help the U.S. get a better deal with China. And some American industries, like steel companies, may end up benefiting as businesses seek out American-made products to avoid the tariffs. But others, like farmers who sell their crops to China, are bracing for a tough summer.
We want a trade deal done as fast as we can get it.
Yep, you want a deal as fast as you can get it. Okay, for all those that don't know how tariffs work, I'll use this example. Because you hear tariffs, I understand. Like a lot of people don't understand tariffs just because our education system is a shit. So they're never going to sit there and tell us exactly this. So let's use this example. Say I produce basketballs in the U.S. Someone else produces basketballs in China. We both sell around the world. It costs me $2.50 to basically manufacture and sell a basketball. China can operate the same amount at way lower cost. Let's just say 75 cents. My $2.50 to 75 cents. Most consumers are going to go overseas because it's cheaper. It's cheaper there, and at the end of it all, they're saving money and still getting the same product, while I lose out on customers because I can't compete. So this is Reaganomics at its finest, mind you. So this is what they try to say. We're basically going to put a tax on any import that comes from China as a deterrent. Keep in mind, a deterrent. It is nothing more than that. So they try to sit there and say, I'm going to put a tax on China as a deterrent, so anybody that does buy anything from overseas and comes over, you are going to pay more. And hopes that in order to avoid it is to go local. Here's the problem with that if you're trying to do China. China, which we already owe well over $800 billion to, you're not affecting the way they produce. You can turn around and say, I'm going to put a tariff on any import. It doesn't affect that China can still produce that very same basketball at 75 cents. So they're not losing money. If anything, you're forcing the consumer to make a choice. At the same time, unless on the left-hand side, meaning me in the U.S., can still either lower my production costs, which is going to be impossible under tariffs, which means I have to raise my prices because China can simply ride the shit out because they can still sell that very same basketball to other places. So again, the only people that benefit in a tariff situation is usually the government that actually inputs the tariffs and the company that basically says, okay, well, if you're going to put tariffs on us, we're going to put tariffs on you. And at the end of it all, in Reaganomics, the only person that always gets screwed is basically guys like you and me at the bottom. Really shouldn't be surprised because this is Reaganomics at its finest. You're going to basically try to charge the use of the interstate, not forgetting the fact that we all have to drive across it. And at the same time, the only person that's getting money is whoever's collecting tariffs. And you can best believe it's not you or me. That's why the tariffs is bullshit and actually bad for business, especially for those who are farmers, because they've already been bailed out once before. They were actually bailed out earlier this year when the government was running out of money, which they will again have to bring up in September because, yes, they can't get a budget they can't get a budget settled because Trump wants a wall, so they're kicking the can down the road again. So we're actually 4 months away from having another talk of another government shutdown. Actually, the fourth government shutdown talk that we've had under this man's presidency. Obama only had one. Bush had two. Clinton actually had one. Under Trump's administration, we've had more talks about government shutdown than any other known presidency, any other known U.S. president. Again, something Trump is actually good at, causing disruption. So, with the way tariffs work, it's not going to end well for us because just like the report says, you are going to wind up paying more in almost everything because if you really think about it, a lot of our stuff really does come from overseas because it's cheaper and easier to make. In the same sense that a lot of our production work goes to Mexico because labor is cheaper and again easier to make, and there's no imports between the U.S. and Mexico. And yet we want to build a wall. So again, fucked up, but unfortunately that's the cold truth. But moving right along anyway, apparently China's not the only country we're beefing with. We're actually beefing with another country, and I'm pretty sure by the time you hear this, you're going to understand what I'm talking about.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the Iranian threat to U.S. forces. Pompeo writes, and I'm quoting him now, "We do not seek war, but he vows that any Iranian attack will be met with what he calls a swift and decisive U.S. response." Let's dig deeper with Brian Hook. He's the U.S. Special Representative for Iran, Senior Policy Advisor to the Secretary of State. Brian, thanks very much for coming in.
Good to see you.
Pretty alarming statement. So give us the details. What's going on?
We received a number of credible threat assessments that Iran was plotting attacks against American interests and against our partners in the region. And so we reposition military assets as a prudential move. It's a defensive move, and to also send a signal to the Iranian regime that they do not want to escalate this.
So what specifically is the U.S. fear? What are the Iranians up to?
Well, they have been running an expansionist and very violent foreign policy around the Middle East for some time. So many of the missiles that you hear about hitting various targets, whether it's in Israel or whether it's in Saudi Arabia, they're Iranian missiles. So we need to really restore deterrence against Iran's regional aggression. The best way we're going to do that is to make clear that we will respond with force if Iran runs an offense.
But you're saying there are new specific threats that you've learned which has caused the U.S. movement of aircraft carrier strike force, bombers, an urgent unannounced visit by the Secretary of State to Baghdad?
Yeah, it was important that the Secretary go to Baghdad to sit with the Iraqi leaders and to make clear that we want a strong, stable, and sovereign Iraq. The Iranian regime doesn't want any of those things.
So you're probably wondering, why in the world are we beefing with Iran? Well, very simple. We did actually have a deal in place with the nuclear arms program that was actually established under President Obama and was working out pretty well, which gave both sides what they wanted. Trump decided to dismantle the deal and continued to dismantle it up until the Iran government sat there and said, "Fuck you, Trump, we're pulling out." And I'm pretty sure that's not the only time Trump's heard the words "pull out." Anyway, aside from that, Iran has actually stepped up their threats, in which most of our Navy is currently near Iran right now, which for all those that definitely know a map, you know that our beloved other country, the other 51st state that we've yet to adopt, Iraq, which we're still there, by the way, is now considered an attack point for Iran. Iran was actually happy with the deal we provided, except that Trump wanted to intercede more control, U.S. control. Doesn't that sound familiar about going into a country that didn't want us there? It sounds kind of familiar. It sounds like the second Iraq. And again, I can't blame Iran for wanting to sit there and pretty much tell Trump, "Fuck you. We want to be on our own. We don't need your Operation Iraqi Freedom." But again, this is Trump pretty much sitting there saying, "Fuck you, I'm going to do what I want because I'm a dictator," or in my mind I think I'm a dictator. So it is amazing now that the majority of our military, which is still overseas, by the way, is now upset to an alert status because, again, this is just Cold War talk, which, for all those that don't know what the Cold War is, it's basically just a whole bunch of bullshit between two countries that really aren't going to do anything. It's kind of just, it's like playing chicken but seeing who's going to blink first. And in this case, nobody's actually going to blink first because, again, Iran and Iraq, which Iraq still sits on the largest oil deposit known to man, and we're basically taking advantage of it, they're not going to actually jeopardize that. So, again, it's gonna be a wait. It's gonna be a wait and see for that situation. Now, moving right along, because I know I did talk about jobs, and this was actually brought to my attention about jobs because they were saying, "Oh, well, we've had the lowest unemployment rates since 1969." And there's one video I want to show before I actually talk about that. Okay, so basically what does that mean? Because, again, a lot of people, when they hear that the job market's doing better, you're looking around left to right, and you're probably going, it's still the same where I live. It's still hard to find decent paying jobs. I have to carry more than one job just to make ends meet. My wages aren't increasing my wages aren't increasing that much to where I can breathe a little easier. Take your pick. The thing about that is, from looking at that, it only benefits red states, which are basically considered conservative states. My state, like Tennessee, unfortunately is considered a conservative state. And in the state of Tennessee, we have right to work. And honestly, right to work is bullshit because it's just another way of saying that companies can basically fire you for anything short of breathing. Which, at the same time, they try to sit there and try to peddle the fact that you can also quit a job just because you want to, which, in reality, you can quit a job whenever you want. It's up to you, but you also have to live with the consequences of leaving it. So, also with conservative states, they seem to carry a lot of our manufacturing skillful industry jobs, which, again, are usually ran by contractors, resource techs, things of that nature, who actually put the workers on temporary employment while working for the client. So therefore, it's still continual work. It is, but it's not permanent work, and it can end because the assignment ends, or the client who actually employs the contractor, who actually employs the contractor, who actually supplies the workers, can turn around and end their agreement at any time. This is not the type of how can I put this? Job market that you would like to be in, because again, when you flood the market with contractors, recruiters, pretty much anybody except offering permanent jobs, that means your attrition rates as far as you losing employees is going to be pretty fucking high. And at the same time, it's also going to be a pain in the ass because, again, if you're going to be sitting there looking at it from a standpoint, jobs in the north have increased. Because the simple fact of the matter is that if you notice between mostly a lot of the northern states, the actual minimum wage has increased. Some states $10, some states $15. So of course the wages are going to go up. Whereas in Nashville, it's still, I believe, around $8.25, give or take. I mean, we're not above $10. I mean, for the minimum wage, we're not above $10. And that alone should tell you something, that the prices of everything else has went up, but the wages have remained stagnant. This is exactly what led to the Great Depression, and honestly, it led to the first recession that we ran into. And we're actually, in the way things are going up, this is basically just a revolution of too big to fail all over again. And we're just waiting for it to pop, because trust me, it usually does. So whenever I hear the job report about, the report being high, employment being low, keep in mind employment doesn't take in consideration contractor or skilled work. If it did and actually excluded that, I am almost certain the employment rate would be a whole lot higher than the 3.6% it's currently sitting at. So that's why I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, yeah, you say jobs, there are more jobs out there, it's true, but it's temporary work. It's not permanent work. People actually want security. People actually want to be able to sit there and say they don't have to worry about a job leaving them because the company decides to close their factory and go down and try to go to a different country. I'm looking at you, GM. I am looking at you, GM. So, and the reason why I say that, because GM just closed a factory in Ohio and moved all of its jobs to Mexico. At the same time, they try to sit there and say they invested in Ohio, and that, but really the only investment was in the next election for the person that was actually posing for Trump. See, followed the money. But keeping it right along, guys. Another thing I want to bring up is the Colorado shooting. There's just no way around that. It is a tragic thing, and the one thing I wanted to show was really the video of this kid that I saw on Friday, and I can't shake it. I can't, because basically, if you haven't seen this video, this is what the kid said. One of the survivors of the shooting.
I was hiding in the corner, and they were right outside the door. I had my hand on the metal baseball bat, just in case, because I was gonna go down fighting if I was gonna go down.
The shooter came in late. He walked to the other side of the classroom where we also had another door, and he opened the door. He walked back as if he was going to go back to his seat. Then he walked back to the door and he closed it. The next thing I know, he's pulling a gun and he's telling nobody to move.
He charged the shooter and immediately was on top of him. Complete disregard for his own safety. He was immediately there to respond. He was immediately on the shooter, and he was ready to end the threat. Kendrick Castillo died a legend. He died a trooper. He got his ticket to Valhalla, and I know he will be with me for the rest of my life.
One of the kids told me that, like a flash, he jumped up. She said, you know, he's a hero, he saved me. She said he jumped up and he ran. She said you couldn't even see how fast he was running, you know, out the door and after this person.
So it was kind of shocking. We had we heard that there was a lockdown, but we thought it was a drill until we saw the officer with the patrol rifle, and then tens of other police cars just coming our way.
Someone entered the building with incredibly malicious intent, using their cowardice, surprise, and superior weapons, and they lost. They completely and utterly lost to good people. I'm not a victim. I refuse to be a victim. Kendrick refused to be a victim. The other students refused to be a victim.
So when you look at something like that, I mean, you at this point, that now makes 272 shootings that have occurred, and they've occurred within a school or school setting. And you're right, BJ. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Derek. Lordstown. I think I said that. I say Ohio. I say Lordstown. I apologize, Derek. And you're right, BJ. Little buddy was ready, and I'm like, the kid sat there and said he had one hand on the door and one hand on the bat because he was ready to go down fighting. Who knew in this day and age that our children who are going into class now have to do shooter drills, have to turn around and be worried that somebody's going to come in there with intentions, with malice intentions and a gun and decide to take lives. In this day and age, for all that we are and for all the progress that we've made, again, it amazes me so how when it comes to guns and basically how to control them, we always seem to be at odds with that. Now, don't get me wrong, I am a gun owner. I am a responsible gun owner because I don't need 1,000 rounds. I don't need more than 5 guns. I don't need 4 or 5 guns. I don't need an AR-15. because I'm not being invaded. And the last time I checked, the skunks and possums that are usually around here usually leave me alone, and I leave them alone. So there's no need to go after them. But anytime gun reform gets pulled up, you will find those people I like to call homosexuals come out of nowhere and say, we don't want the government involved in our guns. Gun laws don't work. People can still get a hold of guns. You know, they keep going down the entire list of reasons why this won't work, not realizing the fact of the matter is the last couple 24, 25 scenarios were guns that were actually purchased legally. 9 times out of 10, the kids actually got guns from their parents. Even here in Tennessee with the Waffle House shooter, he got the gun from his dad. It wasn't illegal, it was legally purchased. That alone should tell you everything that you want to know. And don't get me wrong, there are you can easily, like I said, I'm living proof. You can easily be a responsible gun owner and not lose your shit and not be the exact thing of this. But honestly, there does need to be some changes. There does need to be some regulation. And I was saying it best. I actually use Japan as an example. Japan at this point has gun owners, but has the lowest gun deaths across any spectrum. The reason why? Because honestly of their actual requirements. You have to be anally certified. You have to be medically examined. You have to be medically, physically, and mentally examined by a doctor and a therapist. You have to actually have your gun to be licensed and registered. And at the same time, now the only caveat out of the whole thing is you can't own a pistol in Japan. You can own shotguns and rifles. You can't own pistols. Now, be that as it may, it still worked out great for Japan. In the same sense, Australia, another one, banned assault rifles. Gun deaths dropped dramatically. New Zealand, who honestly had one of the worst shootings in really later time, and really the most recent times, their prime minister and their government just put an assault ban on assault rifles in the quickest amount of time after their tragedy. This is now shooting 272. We have yet to see any movement on what's going to happen with guns. But you're going to sit there and tell me that if I ever bring children in this world, my main thought is, are they going to be able to come home that night? Because if I have to worry about some nut with a gun that he gets from his parents and is able to come into school with any issue, that alone should tell me that maybe I don't want to be a parent, or maybe I don't want to subject my child to that, or maybe I should homeschool my child. But at the same time, it's almost like that kid, like literally the mindset of that kid was that I'm going to go out fighting. And I can't blame the kid. But also, how did we get so far that our children have to have a battle mentality when they should be having a learning mentality? That alone right there should tell you that things need to change. And speaking of things that do need to change, for all those, and I know it is going to be a hellfire transition, but for all those who have been to jail, not asking for a volunteer hand, who know about the cash system. Now, I haven't really looked into this, but I wanted to bring this up because I think for us, the way actually the law works, because the law isn't made to protect criminals, it's there to actually protect pedophiles, rapists, and predators. So it's not there to protect people like you and me, because its sole purpose is to get money out of people. And the reason why I know this, well, because Van Jones did a story about it.
$5,000. Your bond is $3,500.
I'm going to leave your bond at $5,000.
The bail system works by taking money from a defendant in exchange for their release. But if a person can't afford bail, they just have to sit in jail. On an average day, 721,300 people are being held in our jails. But 66% of those people are being held pre-trial, meaning they haven't even been convicted of a crime. So while you're sitting in that cell, you or your family member can try to pay the bond, but for some people that can mean foregoing basic needs like child support or shelter or food. Remember, you're not just in jail for a night or two. You're there until your trial actually starts. That could be weeks or months or years. Like Khalif Browder, who was 16 years old when he was accused of stealing a backpack. His bail was set, though, at $3,000, which he didn't have and couldn't afford. So he ended up spending 3 years at Rikers Island waiting for trial. There he was beaten, he was abused, he was held in solitary confinement. When the charges were later dropped, he was just released. But 2 years later, he was still so traumatized that he killed himself. Jail affects people of color way disproportionately. Black people are jailed at almost 4 times the rate of white people. Leaders on both sides of the aisle agree this is a really big problem. For millions of people around the country, bail reform is not just a talking point, it's a necessity.
And he's right. He's honestly right. Think about that for a second. Like, and I hate to use my state, but my state's a shining example of it. Corporate Corrections of America, CCA, actually has their headquarters here in Tennessee. CCA actually has multiple contracts with states, because not every correctional facility, aka prison, is owned by a state. Because of budget cutbacks and whatnot, private companies have stepped in and said, hey, we'll go ahead and actually manage the prisons for you. You pay us, but also we have a contract that says you have to supply us inmates. I cannot make that up. In the CCA, if you look at it, has a standing contract with Tennessee, yay, that yes, their jails have to be filled with inmates, as well as other states, as in Louisiana, as in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Oregon, and I want to say Rhode Island, but I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to check the CCA website on that. But think about that. I just named off 9 states. I'm sorry, I had to look at my hands. Apologize. I just named off 9 states that this one major corporation has, and they own prisons in all of these 9 states. And they get paid by the government of those states to house inmates. They make bank. Why? Because of that. Our cash bail system. Our cash bail system is honestly bullshit. If you're sitting there and telling me, because let's be honest, the normal, and I'm not insulting anybody when I say this, the normal average everyday person doesn't have $4,000, $5,000 in the bank. I mean that in general. I know it always says that we should always have $1,000 in savings for a rainy day, but $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, it might be a rarity, but definitely it's an impossibility. Now you also have to think, for the simple fact of the matter is just that if you get arrested, you're brought up on charge. The judge, because again, they're funded by by CCA, they are actually entitled to make sure that bond is set to an area that you cannot reach it purposely. Why? Because unless you have a bail bondsman, and trust me, bail bondsman is a billion-dollar industry in itself. Why? For all those that never had to deal with a bail bondsman, I'll tell you, a bail bondsman will actually help bail you out, but you have to pay 10% of your bail. So, simple question: if you are being held on bail if your bail is $1,000, the bail bondsman will put up the rest. You got to put up $100. Now, you would think, okay, $1,000 bail, $100, okay, that might be doable if you have family members. Let's say you don't. Let's say you're by yourself. Let's say that you don't have the money. Let's say if paying $100 meant that you were getting out of jail, or you was going to be short on rent, or food, or utilities, or your car note. Let's say instead of $100, let's say the judge sets your bail at $5,000. Bail bondsman's going to say, come up with $500. I'm not going to bail you out. So again, how the number changes from 100 to 200 to 300, and you got to think they go up. Sometimes 10,000, sometimes 20,000, sometimes 25,000. You've heard multiple. I mean, we've all seen legal cases over the years where people who have the means to get out are getting set these extraordinary funds, bails, $250,000, $500,000, whatever have you. But they're able to be bailed out because they have the means. Guys like you and me, if we get those type of amounts, don't have the means. So you have a choice. Either you're going to give up something in order to get out of jail, or you're forced to sit in jail. And the craziest part about all this, you're sitting in jail without being convicted. It's like serving the time and you never got your fair shot. Of course, the law says that you are given a fair and expeditious trial. But only until we started implementing this cash bail system can you honestly put people in jail before they get to their trial. And honestly, think about that. You are literally serving time before you can even be seen. It's from a common sense point, it's insanity. But again, this is nothing more, and I'm going to put it this way. This is the modern day slave ring, because they always talk about, well, we're against modern day slave trafficking and whatnot. We're against childs being sold into slavery and whatnot. But your cash bail system is basically the most legal holding of individuals without being tried ever conceived. All the more reason why, honestly, we need to do away with the cash bail system. It honestly should be based on your crime. Like, for example, you're caught shoplifting. Okay, you what do you need a bail for? You got caught shoplifting. Either that they can garnish your wages, or they can, look into whatever you have for assets, or help you find a job and then take from there. They can garnish wages from there. At least at that point, it's not taking away a person's life just to be seen for shoplifting. The more heinous the crime, then at that point you should be in jail. For example, if you are caught red-handed with murder, okay, you go to jail. You took a life. It is beyond a shadow of a doubt. But there needs to be, honestly, the whole entire cash bail system needs to go. There are other ways to track people aside from putting them in jail before and having them wait, sitting in jail until their court date. There are easier ways to come up with. But you know what? It goes back to, yes, again, to corporations who actually have contracts with states who use the exact same system to basically bring up revenue, because Nashville is infamous for it. Anybody who's lived in Nashville, Tennessee, you will know off the bat that the way our policing is set up and the way traffic tickets are set up, they are designed to entice you to pay, instead of coming down to the courthouse, paying $25 for parking, to wait 2 hours for a judge who decides that he now wants to show up, who's going to sit there and make you rush. And then at the end of it all, you're paying court costs, which is usually $100 to $150. So again, you literally, at the end of the day, which more than likely it is going to take all day, that you're going to be wasting anywhere from $100 to $175 just to get the case thrown out. But you can pay $280 and never have to set foot in the court. Never have to set foot in court. See the deterrence there? Somewhere along the line, you're going to come out of money. And that's all they really want. Fuck justice. That's all they really want. So again, the whole cash system, because like I said, it can't be justice as long as cash is involved. Because let's be honest, those with money usually get away with murder. And aside from maybe one or two people. But for the rest of us, we are stuck unless we can somehow get a lifeline to get out. And that alone is a fucking problem with that. But moving right along as far as that goes, because that's not the only thing that's fucked up about this world. This story also came up as well.
That's what you get punished for. No! Not for being part of the resistance. Because officially, there is no resistance. Not for helping people escape. Because officially, there's no such thing as escape. Is this what freedom looks like?
Who knew that The Handmaid's Tale was actually a documentary? Well, already this year, 4 states have passed so-called heartbeat bills, essentially banning abortions at 6 weeks, before many women even know they're pregnant. And other states are pushing it even further. Georgia has a bill that criminalizes not just abortion in Georgia, but also leaving Georgia to get a legal abortion. Next week, Alabama will vote on a total ban on abortions. And in Ohio, a male Republican lawmaker has a bill that calls for the reimplantation of ectopic pregnancies, a literal medical impossibility that calls into question whether any of these far-right men passed high school biology. All of these bills are unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade, of course, and of course, that is the entire point. Joining me now to discuss is Teresa Tomlinson, the former mayor of Columbus, Georgia, who, can I announce, is running for the United States Senate. Yes, we're going to talk about that in a bit. And Elise Hogue, president of NARAL, Pro-Choice America. And I'm going to go to you first, Teresa, because the bills are facially unconstitutional. They seem to violate Roe versus Wade. Can you describe first what is in the Georgia bill and whether the goal is just to overturn Roe?
Absolutely. The goal is to overturn Roe. In fact, that's in the preamble of the bill. It literally says that the object is to take the Planned Parenthood versus Casey viability definition and make it encompass the entire protections of Roe versus Wade. So therefore, it would be meaningless. That viability would be and personhood would begin at the point of conception, at which point a pregnant woman, would become a vessel of the state, because the state would then take a compelling interest in her womb and there would be competing personhoods. Of course, as you point out, that is theologically, legally, and biologically impossible to have one person encased within the flesh of another, one person living off the lifeblood of another. But they have considered it to be such personhood that they've declared it to have taxing status, so that this cellular life has taxing status and also has to be counted in the census. So it is an extreme effort to overturn Roe versus Wade. And you said it's patently unconstitutional. It is today, Joy, but we're about to see whether we have jurists or ideologues on the Supreme Court of the United States, because if indeed they're ideologues, then they can rewrite the law in any way they wish, and we could lose the constitutional protections that are so evident in our Constitution.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it right there because it does run about 9 minutes. But the idea of that is, and whoever you are across the board, however you feel about abortion, because I have this conversation a lot. I have this conversation a lot with people because for anybody that's heard me or anybody that's had conversations with me, I am pro-choice. I believe that a woman's body is her right. Whatever she decides to do with her body is her business. If she decides that she wants to keep it, if she decides that she wants the child, it's on her. If she decides that she doesn't want to be a mother, it's on her. It is not my job to meddle in the affairs of someone else when it comes to themselves. Because to keep it very simplified, if a man can jack off and no one tells him, if a man can jack off and no one says about the loss of life that he's spilling out and no one bats an eye, that at the same time, a woman can do whatever she wants because that is hers. Almost in the same sense that a man can get Viagra covered under insurance, but a woman has to pay for her own birth control. Which I still think to myself is the craziest thing, because apparently when your dick don't work, we forgive you. But if you get pregnant, we tell you what to do. It is asinine. It is stupid. It is beyond the point. Now, again, I say that because if you don't like abortion, that's cool. You don't like it. You think it's immoral. A lot of those of the religious side, especially, they always think that no one's thinking about the child. No one, and a lot of people don't understand. I said I go by a medical term is when I say that. Because for me, conception of life doesn't start in the womb. Conception of life starts when you're born. When you're born, you have a date of birth. When you die, you have a date of death. Life begins when you're born, as far as my consideration. So, when people are talking about the baby, in my mind, it is a fetus until it is born, and then it's a child. That is a scientific term for it. Those that actually want to turn around and give it humanizing, or want to sit there and say, well, it's a child, they don't have any say in it, someone has to speak up for it. Well, here's the thing. To me, that's like you're meddling in things that has nothing to do with you. If you want a child so bad, why don't you go to plenty of our orphanages and places of foster homes that plenty of children have been born, but no one wants to foster them. If you want to be such a bleeding Mother Teresa, go there. Adopt a child. Help them out. Help out the children that have been born. You're worried about the children that have been born. And also, I'd say at the same time, it's like you're not really pro-life, you're pro-birth. Because if you were pro-life, then at the same time, you're not really caring about the child after it's been born. And you're right, BJ. We do have idiots that are still making laws. And Derek, you are actually right. Roe versus Wade is still the law of the land. So they can introduce all the abortion bills they want to. However, the problem is, just like she said, the Supreme Court can go back and actually overturn things, which was actually the initial fear that they had when accused predator Brett Kavanaugh was being added to the Supreme Court, because he was another Trump pick. So because he was another Trump pick, he actually had views against abortion. He actually had views against abortion, saying abortion to him was immoral. And the fear was that they already had a conservative-leaning Supreme Court that could turn around and overturn Roe versus Wade, which any Supreme Court can overturn a previous Supreme Court decision, which is the fear. Now, I'm not saying it may or may not happen, but at the same time, they realize that they can't overturn Roe versus Wade right now. So what can they do at the state level? At the state level, they can try to introduce these heartbeat bills, where if a heartbeat is detected, that they can't abort the child. So you're going to force the mother to basically carry the child to term, unless under any extreme circumstances that her health is in danger. This is why I say that's bullshit. And again, you can disagree with me, which is fine, but it's bullshit because, like I said, until the time, and I said equally, I said, if you put in a bill that said a man is subject for other people to tell him about his body and what to do with it the same way as a woman's, there would be riot and tiki torches and white polo shirts everywhere. Get your hands off my body! And the women be looking at you like, oh, you're pissed? Think about that. And again, like I said, it's amazing to me how, again, Viagra is covered. I used to think that at that point, if your dick don't work, I think that's God's way of telling you you're done. But apparently, we use science to get our dicks hard, not cure cancer. At the same time, if a woman just wants to, have birth control for preventative services, no company wants to cover it, and she has to come out of pocket. And they wonder why. And I still wonder why some women who are conservative still follow this and still don't believe that their rights are being infringed upon. But you can't convince everybody. But again, from my aspect of it all, it's just that this is the reason why a lot of people should be a little bit, not just women, but if you're like me and you're thinking that everybody should be equal, you should be just as pissed off as a woman is that she just can't be allowed to live her fucking life. But then again, everybody's worried about Aisha Curry, and she doesn't get enough male attention. Says a lot about the attention span of our country, doesn't it? But moving right along for my last two stories before we get to our good news. I did want to bring up two police stories that came up because, like I said, we should always talk about police brutality. We should always talk about the fact that obviously law enforcement needs a retool when it comes to us. And these two stories I'm about to pull up are really no exception to the matter. So here's the first one.
Show me your hands! Drop it!
Hey, police department, come on out!
Viper 33. I think it's a cap gun, but they are shooting something off. Show me your hands! Drop it! Drop the gun! Shots fired, shots fired. Black male with a gray hoodie had the gun. Where are you hit?
My side. My right side.
Alright, I got fire and IMSA coming.
Alright, no, it's on my other side.
Alright.
Right side.
Yes, to me.
It's like my hip.
47 on fire, there, go ahead. You're okay.
Was it a bullet?
I got fire and IMSA coming. I don't want to stand you up and have you walk. Okay, I want you to just stay right there because I don't want anything to move or anything like that. Okay? You're not gonna die. All right? You're not gonna die. Fire and IMSA's on their way. Just stay still.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The victim. Gunshot victim. Yeah. I just don't want to move him until fire and IMSA get here because it's in his hip.
Okay. Is he bleeding back?
No, it's. Are you hurt anywhere else other than your hip?
My thigh.
Which thigh?
My left thigh.
I don't have any gloves on me. I don't see blood. Where on your thigh? Oh, right there. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yep. No. No. Oh. Go ahead for 5%.
Hey, we'll stay here with this guy. How long do you go sit in the car?
Oh, okay. I'll call you.
Yep, you saw it, ladies and gentlemen. Literally, show me your hands. Pat, 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 pat. 0.6 seconds. 0.6 seconds. And he sat there and said, literally on the radio, I think they're firing cap guns. Okay. Here's the problem I have with that. Because I've heard a cap gun. I've heard a real gun. If you as an officer can't tell the difference between a cap gun and a real gun, probably should not be law enforcement, or basically get your hearing checked. On top of that, he didn't announce himself as a police officer, which protocol number 1, announce yourself as a police officer. Number 2, he goes, show me your hands from a coveted spot, waits 0.6 seconds. 0.6 seconds. Literally, the human reaction of that makes no sense. 0.6 seconds. There was 15 plus seconds of warning. Really? No offense, Carrie, but I would love to see where you saw that on the video, because you literally see the officer go look through a fencing area, and you see him say, "Show me your." You pretty much hear, "Show me your hands," and you hear firing. Now, it's amazing that they literally said the police were there and shot at police. You need to rewatch the video. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. You can put the link in the video for us to see, but this is actually the video that shows us from the cop's standpoint. So, again, if at this point that they said that the shooting was justified, and again, Mr. Carey, like I understand at the very start, okay, then show us the video and I will post that up there and we can put that up there and we can watch it if you have it. But moving right along with that, again, the officer, show me your hands. I did, and you can sit there because this is straight from his body cam, which again has always been an issue with officers because they can adjust and turn off body cams and somehow they mysteriously get broken, which body cams have always been an issue for law enforcement. Also at the same time, he reached from a coveted position. Again, which kind of makes sense, which doesn't really make sense, no offense, Mr. Dillon, because if they were literally saying police were there and shouted police, then again, wouldn't that mean that the kids would have probably stopped shooting? I mean, no offense, Dylan, if you're sitting there saying, and I just thought about that, because thinking about that video just now, if they were shouting police, wouldn't the kids have stopped firing? but they didn't. So again, oh, what's the video called? I can't find it in my feed. Okay, well, when you find it, please show us. But that's from the cop. That's from the officer's body cam. You can't sit there and say, again, if they're shouting police, why would kids still be firing? If he's from a coveted position, why would he not be able to see the BB gun? Or better yet, why did he not wait for backup if he was unsure of the sound? And you're right, Derek. Where did they get their training? Because that sounds more like Call of Duty than anything else. That doesn't sound like an officer using proper protocol to bring down a suspect. And, I'll play it back. That's fine. No, it's America. That should give you enough warning to drop the gun. Oh, okay. Hang on, Dylan. Because we can play it again. No problem. Because I can play it again, guys. That's not a problem.
Show me your hands! Drop it!
Viper 33. I think it's a cap gun, but they are shooting something off.
Show me your hands! Drop it! Drop the gun!
Shots fired, shots fired. Black male with a gray hoodie had the gun.
So at the very start of the video, okay, that was the very start of the video from the officer's body cam. So all I said, no, you went past it. You cannot pretend to hear them shout, "It's the police, come on out." Hang on, link me the video and I'll timestamp it. That wasn't 15 seconds. Like I said, Dylan, you are more than welcome to show us where you believe you heard "this is the police." When the story literally sat there and says there was a 911 call that was put in about shots fired. Now, again, I played the video again for the world to see. Obviously, the only person that heard something was not there. And again, Dylan, you are more than welcome to, link up whatever you found and show us. Because I'm not calling you a liar, but I'm just saying. But again, it goes back, but it doesn't take away from the fact the officer did not identify himself. The officer literally said, "Show me your hands," and shot first, and shot literally a second out, 0.6 seconds. No human can react that fast. None. At the same time, 4 shots. If he thinks he had a BB gun, wouldn't an officer's training? Like I said, not all officers are bad, because I actually spoke about this with some friends of mine who are in law enforcement, and they are pissed about this video. They are pissed about this video because they sat there and said, well, the first thing he should have did was identify himself as a police officer. I have my issues with law enforcement. I do. But I also want them to defend themselves, because a lot of good officers are out there. And again, you can sit there and say, well, he identified himself. If law enforcement officers who are viewing this video are coming forward and saying, no, the officer was wrong, again, it's more backing. Dude, you're all wrong. Can you at least tell me the source so I can look it up? Well, I could put it there. And again, Dylan, no offense, man. You brought it up. If you brought it up and you believe you're right, I can only tell you, man, to do your due diligence and show the rest of the world. Because I'm, unfortunately, to be very short and stout with you, I'm not going to do your homework for you. So, and you're right on, Kathy. Happy Trigger Cop. And again, the most messed up part about this is that the Oklahoma DA decided that there was no charges. The shooting was just. So again, the kid had a cap gun. The kid had a BB gun, which was validated to be a gun. And you know what? The more I thought about this, I see why. I honestly see why. Because as I was growing up, my mom did not allow me to have water guns. She did not allow me to have water guns, cap guns, Any type of gun, for that matter. I couldn't have it. Other kids were able to. We couldn't even have super soakers. And I used to be so pissed because I thought that my mom was just being hard on me. But as more and more of these stories come up, I understand why. Because you do have those officers out there, just like they did Tamir Rice, will literally shoot you because they perceive you as a threat, but yet will bring in anybody else who's armed to the teeth. And again, Mr. Dillon, dude, do your homework. Because again, you're going to tell me about the source. The source is right there for the world to see. Again, you brought up the point. And all I'm asking you to do is to prove your point. That's all I'm sitting there saying. Because it doesn't help help me to help you to do your work for you. You must do your work yourself. I am merely presenting the narrative as it shows, and I'm leaving it out there because there's only one way to see it. The officer was not willing to arrest. The officer was willing to shoot because they are predispositioned to basically shooting black people. So again, Mr. Dillon, appreciate you watching, man. Do your homework. But that's not the only case. But that's not the only story that I have. And again, it's the other one also questionable as all get out. And again, this is played from where it was put up. And again, we'll watch it in its entirety.
Calm down, Clarence.
Nah, hell
Sir.
no. He don't even know my name and tell him I have a warrant.
What did he do?
That's what I'm saying.
For what?
For what?
I'm from Louisiana.
For what?
For what?
Yeah.
I don't even live in Louisiana, so how would I have a... You don't know my name, so how can you tell me I have an open warrant in Louisiana?
Sir,
stop.
Clarence, hold on.
Coming.
Okay, well, you
Go
know
get
that
your phone.
You don't even know me.
I already got you.
No, you don't even know
Sir.
me. You don't even know my name.
I'm under control.
Take over
Why
inside.
would I trust you?
Hello. I'm confused. He don't even live in Louisiana.
No. You don't. How can you tell me I have something you don't know my name? You just pulled up in front of my house and then. I don't trust. Cause you shaking like you scared or something.
You're pulling.
Okay.
I don't trust you shaking like you scared.
He don't live in Louisiana.
I don't even live in Louisiana. How the hell would I have a warrant in Louisiana?
Quentin, you already said your name was that.
My name is not Quentin. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Put your hand by your...
Sir, his name is not Quentin.
Fucking Quentin.
Then let's see the ID and we'll be done.
Okay, hold on.
You told me three different names. You woke up and told me three different names.
Hold on.
That's the third name you just... No.
Clint.
Fuck that. No, I'm not finna be the next nigga you kill.
No.
Fuck that. No.
Stop.
His name is not Quentin.
Fucking Quentin.
Then let's do this and be done. I got no probable cause. I got
You
your
just
picture.
stopped in front of my fucking house.
Yes, I know who you are.
It's you don't. What's my name? Man, fuck that. You shaking like you scared. I'm not finna let you put me in handcuffs.
Please stop. Stop. Please stop.
My name is not no fucking Quentin. You don't even know my name and tell me I got a warrant in Louisiana?
Okay. Yes. You
Do
want
I
to
look
show
like
you want me to
show
show
me
you
the
the
picture?
picture?
Show me the picture.
Okay, wait.
Just walk with me.
Nah,
No, walk with me.
No.
Tell him walk with me.
He's not going nowhere. He's not going nowhere.
Fuck that. I need your supervisor or
I am
somebody
the
else.
supervisor. Come on.
Well, let me see your stripes. Well, I need
Let's walk
somebody
over
over
to the car.
No, you're not
Walk
gonna get me
over
to
the
your
car.
car. No.
Sir.
No,
Sir.
fuck that. You in my yard on my property. Fuck that.
Calm down.
Stop.
Just
Stop.
calm
You
down.
stop. You stop.
Who are you looking for?
That's what
His
I'm saying.
name is
My
not
fucking
Quentin.
Quentin.
Let me see your
You
ID.
think I'm from because I got dreads or something?
No.
You just
Let me
pulled
see.
up in front of my fucking house and told me I got a
Because you
warrant
had
in
the dog
Louisiana.
walking.
So what? That's my fucking dog.
That's our dog. That's our dog.
Go in the house. Look, man.
Sir, that's our
I
dog.
want you touching me while you shaking. You need to step back and calm down. No, fuck that.
Sir, his name is not Quentin. That's our dog.
You just told me three different names. You pulled up on some bullshit talking about I got a stolen dog. My dog is chipped.
That's
I got
our-
a chip in
yes,
my dog.
we
I
have
got dogs since he
papers.
was born.
Okay. Let me see the ID.
And then you talking about some shit in Louisiana. Then you say my name is Quentin. My name is not no fucking
What is
Quentin.
it?
I'm not telling you my
What is your
name, but
last
it's not
name?
Quentin. I'm not
Okay.
telling you my last
You have
name.
the units come here. You put your hands behind your back then, okay?
No, fuck that.
Sir, what did he
shit.
do
Man,
anything?
This is the shit I'm talking about. Behind the fucking dog that's mine.
That's our dog. We can go get you the
You just
papers.
seen me walk out my house and then just came and put it in front of my yard.
Oh my God. Sir, who are you looking
stop,
for?
man, because you shaking like
Get my phone out of the car.
There you got him running.
Get my phone out.
Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down.
Man, fuck this.
Let me show you this.
Please calm down. Who are you looking for?
Fucking me?
Yes, I want to. I want to do this so we're done and over with. Okay? Okay?
Okay, well, you shaking and you
No, but you're pulling on me, so just, okay. Right here, we're good. Okay. Here's the deal. Doesn't that look a lot like you?
No, that don't look like
That's
me.
not
What the fuck is
him.
wrong with you, man?
Calm down.
What you trying to say? Because I got dreads and I'm black, that's me?
No.
That's not
You
him.
fucking, she can see that's not me from
Oh
over
my
there.
God.
Head.
No,
Let's see your ID.
what?
Stop. We got no problem.
My name, you ain't got no fucking shit. You ain't, man, fuck
No,
shit.
please
Look,
stop,
it's
stop,
gonna take
stop,
like
stop.
Two of y'all, it's gonna take more than
Please
two.
stop. Please leave him alone, please.
Look,
No, please, that is not him. Please leave
man,
him
get the fuck,
alone.
man, get out my
I
yard,
need to do a
man.
report on this. I need to do a report.
No, you need to get the fuck out of my yard. You just said I'm somebody named Quinn.
Oh
You
my
got
God.
dreads and he black.
Come on, come on.
What the fuck is that shit?
Okay, come on.
Nah, fuck that.
Okay.
But now you want to leave, right?
No, I want to do a report on this.
No, you need to get somebody here that's over you because you just
Okay.
made the biggest fucking mistake.
Why?
How the fuck you pull in front of my yard
Come on.
because I'm black with dreads and tell me I got a warrant for
Okay,
Louisiana?
okay.
You,
No, he
you
just
racist.
said our kids was out here.
No, my fucking kids.
Okay. Oh my God.
Well, you need to get the sergeant that's over here.
He's looking. He's
Man,
my sergeant.
oh my God.
The picture didn't look like.
But that he didn't even ask him his name.
Don't leave now. Now stay here. Let me see that picture. Get that picture on the video.
Okay, so the one thing, because I know Mr. Dillon, who has already made it point, and I know he did, because he was going to, and I'm not making fun of you. I'm trying not to make fun of you, by the way. But at the same time, the reason why I bring up that story was basically, again, because Dillon said, listen carefully at 9 seconds, where he sat there and officer said, let me see your ID. Here's the problem with that, Dillon. The officer is already certifiably sure that he's got the right person. He did not ask for ID when he met the individual. He's already got a hand on him as he's putting him in the arrest position. He's already escalated the situation so high that the other black man, had every right to be angry. And you know, the funny thing about that, Dillon, as you're about to point out so well, why didn't the officer ask for his ID just to go ahead and clear this all out? Sorry, I was talking about the video I linked. Well, I didn't see a video, but I'm sure it's somewhere. But again, with this one, the reason why I bring this up is because the officer, as I looked into the story, there was a police report put out about a stolen dog. It was given that man's address. That man and his children were actually outside as the officer rolled up. The officer pretty much went ahead and pretty much got the dude by the arm and said, "You got a warrant out for your arrest." He did not ask for ID. He did not identify him as far as the person on the warrant. He simply looked at the paper, saw him, and assumed he was the guy. Reason why? Because basically he's a black man with locks. So imagine if me and my girlfriend happen to be out and about, and then there is an exact warrant out for my arrest, and I should say for my arrest. Let's say that a person who matches my description has locks, black man, and has been warrant, actually has an arrest warrant out, has a warrant out for his arrest. You would think that an officer would sit there and go, "Excuse me, sir, could I just see your ID? I need to validate who you are." At that point, any reasonable person would sit there and say, "Yes, you can look at it. May I ask why?" At that point, the officer is obligated to tell you. You are, and that's the one thing a lot of people don't understand, is just that the thing about some of these officers out here is they think that we don't know the law. You have every right in the world to ask an officer, "Why are you detaining me?" You have every right in the world to ask an officer, for his badge number. You can ask for the sergeant on duty. What that basically is, that is his commanding officer during his shift that has to come out and respond when the request is made. The arresting officer, when a person does ask for the sergeant on duty, cannot turn that down. He does have to call his sergeant. The sergeant does have to come out there, and he has to give a report. So, okay, you leftists always that. Yep, I'm good, Dylan. The moment you sat there and went that route, you're good. But thanks for watching. So again, yeah, you're right, Derek. You know we all look the same out here. We do. 2 officers and no training. You're exactly right. Because again, the situation, he's in his front yard. An officer cannot come onto your property without probable cause or a dangerous threat of loss of life. He walked into this man's yard. Even as an officer, that's trespassing. He cannot come onto anybody's property without due process. So again, he's already in the wrong. As the video looks, even though the video is started, you see him already trying to get the man in the arrest position. So at this point, because of our record with cops that do this part, that they would rather arrest you than answer your question, escalates a situation. Shouldn't be surprised about that. So I'll see a lot of people, because I've seen, well, why didn't he just ask for his ID? The officer asked for his ID after he literally said 3 different names, and the guy sat there and said, none of those are not my names. He could have sat there at that moment and let him go and said, okay, let's take a step back. Would you please show me your ID? If you show me your ID, we can clear all this up. And we can go from there. If you want my commanding officer down here to file a report, that's fine. But if you just show me your ID, we can clear all this up. Now, that would be an officer that has training to know that if he escalates the situation, it's only going to get worse. He didn't give a shit. Why? Because he thought his badge and his intimidation tactics, and he thought that the guy didn't know the laws, would just simply comply. That was not the case. So, with that being said, they never got to the point of asking him for his ID until the second officer came up. And again, the situation's already escalated. The second officer should have told the other guy to go over there, let me talk to him, because you've done the damage. I need to calm both sides down, and therefore, you got to go over there. At the same time, again, when all this was going down, it didn't seem that none of it could have simply been answered because the officer didn't try to de-escalate. He merely wanted to get the guy in cuffs. Now, I could chalk that up to training, which it probably is no training because an officer only gets 6 months, which is kind of funny. A beautician has to take nearly a year of training to be certified. A cop gets half a year. At the same time, it doesn't take much just to be a decent human being, even if you're a law enforcement person, and just to go up and say, hey, I would just like to see your ID and tell you why. So that way it's understood. The reason why I say that, and Dylan, I still hope you're watching, because what happened to that man happened to me. And it happened to me almost 4 years ago. It happened to me in a place because I was just simply driving. A cop saw me get into a car. Next thing I know, 4 squad cars all surround me. All of them, guns drawn. The cop tells me to get out the car. I get out the car. He tells me to walk back. I walk back. I sit there and ask him what's this all about. He sat there and tells me to shut up. And again, it's kind of hard to argue when you've got guns pointed at your head. So all you can do is comply in that situation. Long story short, as I'm sitting in the back of a squad car, they're all looking at a picture in my ID. And I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck is going on? A few minutes later, they let me out. He sat there and said, first words he says to me, Mr. Buchanan, I do apologize. The reason why we detained you is because you fit the description of a man that just robbed a couple in a nearby city. The man was told to have locks and to be a man of your height and weight. So again, as Derek has already sat there and said, we all look alike. But the thing the officer did do differently, He sat there and said, I know this caused you a great, he said, I know this fucked up your day. If you want my sergeant down here to file a report, I will gladly call him. What's the difference between that guy and the other guy? That guy knew that he tried his best and tried to sit there and say, look, you want to file a report, I'm not going to knock you for it. I'll even call my superior down here. The one in that story didn't give a shit. And what do you say, Derek? Let's not go after Dylan. He only sees one side of it, like a lot of people do in this country. It's okay to disagree, but look at the full story. Derek, I would like to say that, but the moment that Mr. Dillon decided to say leftist was the reason I started ignoring him after that. Because here's my thing, and I've always said it best. I don't go left, I don't go right. I present the story and the facts. And to do so means that we always have to go back and look beyond the story. Let's look beyond what was said and always try to look at what was reported. Now, he may be on the other end of that. That is all well-intentioned. That is his prerogative. But personally, if he wants to put his head in the sand and sit there and say it's justified, he's got to live with the consequences of his actions. But again, I always sit there and say, if you see something else, then you are more than welcome, as I've said many a times in this podcast, and thank you all guys who are watching. But I've also said many times on this podcast, if you can show a different side of it, and it's legit, post it. Let's talk about it. Because I'm all about discussion. But the moment you start labeling and saying, well, your view, you're going to be this way and that way, there's nothing to talk about. You're already closed-minded. And I don't need closed-minded individuals. But I am about opening those minds. But again, Derek, I think Dylan may have already fell off, and that's fine. Because I don't think he was going to, stick around anyway, because he basically wanted me to do his homework for him, and I'm sorry, this ain't high school. But anyway, again, I just say at that point, there is a big ass discrepancy when it comes to law enforcement and police and us, and I just wish that would change. But to take it from somebody that basically was on the other end of that and got treated like someone who was a usual suspect, I see why now there's fear. I see why now my mom doesn't allow me to have toy guns. I see why now the things that, considering that tomorrow is Mother's Day, I see the fear that black mothers have for their sons and still do. And even though I didn't see it as a child, I do see it now, and I get it. And also, the lesson that I took from that is that you definitely need to know the law. The law, knowledge is power in any sense of the word. The more knowledgeable you are, the less ways they can get at you, because you'll be on the same curve as them. That's the lesson I took from that. Aside from the fact of saying there are just some police out there that just don't need to be police. So, going to our last stories, because like I said, that was a very we haven't had a tense moment. We never really had a tense moment. I mean, I've had people come on the show and, call me a leftist, say I'm an Obama disciple. They sat there and said, you're not a real Christian. I'm like, dang, huh? I mean, your opinion is your opinion. But that's been a while since we had a tense moment where a guy was like, well, that's not live in the video. Oh, okay. Well, could you show us what you saw, tinfoil person? I mean, I'm just one man with a webcam, but I'm pretty sure you can find it, right? Anyway, tense, but we're gonna get past that. So, because the simple fact of the matter is, he wasn't gonna do anything. He just wanted to troll. So, anyway, like I said, Mother's Day. Mother's Day tomorrow. Let's keep it rolling. So, good news, because honestly, whenever we have a lot of doom and gloom, we do need some good news, to make us feel better, to make us feel like we still got some fires in the iron when it comes to humanity. And I did find some good news stories to where I know, tinfoil person, too nice, Will. I'm being nice because he probably, bless him. That's all I can say. As they always used to say in the South, oh, bless your heart. Yes, Dylan, bless your heart. Anyway, let's go and get to the story before he comes back with a vengeance, before he tries to come back and say some other stuff. Anyway, so these are stories I want to get to that I thought were pretty cool, because, this is May. Graduation is happening for a lot of people. Special shout out to my cousin Kennedy, who graduated from Western Kentucky University with his bachelor degree. Q-Dog for life. I want to say, because I wasn't able to be there, and I hope when you watch this, again, congratulations. You put in hard work. You deserve it. May that bachelor degree get you where you want to go, because I've always said college is always there for those that want to finish. And there's nothing wrong with trade schools. There's nothing wrong with picking up a trade, because that's just as honorable as well. But whatever path that you take, don't give up. Trust me, I know. Don't give up. Stick to it, and may it serve you well. But going into that though, the story I wanted to share was about this woman, former homeless student who's now graduating Georgetown today, where literally she's from from basically Washington D.C., who pretty much lived her life in a homeless shelter, public housing, and even some abandoned areas at some point. But she will actually, which this is actually a little outdated story, but as of today, she'll actually be graduating from Georgetown University with a degree in behavioral sciences. And the thing, and I love stories like this, because stories like that make me, make me feel warm inside. It's always that whole thing of, I always say, and I don't mean to say black people, but God damn it, we magical. I don't think that gets said enough. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of all races, but when it comes to our people, we are some magical motherfuckers, if you think about it. And the fact of the matter is, you give us shit and we hand you back gold. You give us the poorest conditions and we come out Prince strutting. Anybody remembers Prince when he came out in those assless chaps? A lot of y'all ain't gonna know. But when he came out strutting in assless chaps and played Purple Rain, this dude was every bit a Maybelline makeup model, but could still take your girl. That's the kind of confidence we have when you literally turn around and you give us shit and we come out strutting like Prince. Congratulations to her, first and foremost, because like I said, she came from beginnings that we have heard so many times over and over again, only to turn around as of today and be a college graduate like so many others out there, including my cousin. So definitely wanted to let her story be known, because like I said, feel good story for me on that. The other one is an example of what you should do when you go out to eat. For example, there's one very fortunate person in New York City who left a $500,000 cashier's check, but she didn't tip the waiter. Long story short, she basically skipped out on the tip. Her waiter actually noticed the cashier's check, and if you haven't noticed with most cashier's checks, this one was particularly blank. It was signed, but no name, which means that, well, anybody could have used it. So instead of, being the dick, because again, she didn't tip, he could have sat there and, did some shady shit, but he did the right thing. He did the right thing and actually turned it into the proprietors. The woman did eventually come back and did get her check. And she was actually shocked, because the simple fact of the matter, that it was the waiter that she basically skipped out on, which eventually she did make that right by giving him $500. So, pay it forward. And again, if you have a waitress or you're going to a restaurant and you are served and they're good service, tip them. If they're bad service, give them $1. At least you tipped them. But you should always sit there. And do the right thing. That's what I always try to say to do. And aside from that, the last story I have is really a video where I can understand from this kid, well, not as much as a proponent of big feet, but this kid and what Shaq did for him, I thought was pretty cool.
Mom couldn't afford shoes, the kid had big feet. And I just kind of reminisced back how that used to be me, my mom and my dad.
me shoes out of all people.
Well, this will help a lot. I won't have to so much worry about dress shoes. He hasn't had a pair of dress shoes in maybe about 4 or 5 years because it's been hard trying to find the ones that actually fit.
I thought this was a good thing to do. Mom and kid plays basketball, and Bruce did it for me, and I just wanted to return the favor.
So again, good story. Like I said, if you're a person that basically has big feet, pretty much me, shoes are hard to find, especially shoes that you like, because, sometimes they come up in the ugliest colors known to man. And in this case, this kid had a size 18 foot. So size 18 feet, he's going to be a 7-footer someday. And it was cool to actually see somebody who's Shaq in that particular situation want to just pay it forward and help this kid out by buying him shoes. Trust me, Shaq's got the money, he can do it. But aside from that, again, it's just paying it forward. Just basically being a decent human being is really all that it is. Matt Munson, what is this chick ranting about? I don't know, dude. I think you jumped on the wrong podcast, but thanks for watching. Anyway, but pretty much like I said, just want to say that story because, like I said, we need something feel good aside from tomorrow being Mother's Day. If your mom is still around, call her, give her a hug, let her know you still care, buy her a gift, take her out to eat, whatever you decide to choose to do. And if your mom's not around, just remember for the good times and things of that nature. But aside from else, it's like life's short. Whatever it is, just be around your mom. But that's going to do it for this show. Thank you, everybody who was watching, because there were a lot of y'all watching this time, and I certainly appreciate that. But I do actually have another show, basically my Off-Limits podcast. I know it's every Saturday. It'll actually be tomorrow. It's basically a show, like I said, we do tackle the uncomfortable subjects, and which basically the reason why I cover them is because the only way you can make something comfortable is to go into that area of uncomfortableness. So I hope tomorrow at 8 to 9 p.m. you guys can all join me as I usually post this live, go on Facebook Live and YouTube. And I'm not the only guy that actually has podcasts out there from the Table of Bosses, as we call ourselves. Vaughn, who's actually watching this right now, has several podcasts of his own. He actually has the I Get That Reference VST, which is a 30-minute podcast going over various music, video games, and just various news that you might find informative, very interactive, such as my own. He also has the Rhythm Nest, where you can reminisce over the rhythm, where he actually goes over certain albums and gives a 4-tier rating system. And for all those who are up-and-coming artists, he actually allows you guys to send music to him for his Step Into the Ring segment, where if you're brave enough to actually step into the ring and let us hear your music and give you a no-holds-barred brutal criticism, definitely hit up Vaughn Weatherspoon on Facebook. He also has Random as Fuck with Uncle VZ. What is Random as Fuck? It is basically the pool of ratchetness we sometimes stick our pinky toes into to basically give us a break from life and have a little fun and laughter. Usually if you actually go to his page on Facebook, that's Westport, he actually has a calendar up to where you'll be able to see all of his shows. Also, our other friend of mine, Thomas Reed, we call him the Mountain Puncher, has the To Be Determined podcast, which is basically a guy who is about fitness. He loves to talk about things that have worked for him, certain ways of eating, nutrition, exercise, and just basically give his own personal testimony. That's usually every Saturday at 3 p.m. Also, my other buddy, definitely last but not least, our other buddy, DJ King Eddie Wayne, Trace Brown, has a few shows of his own. He also has the Bump Down, which is a musical podcast, which is music, culture, knowledge, numbers. See, Vaughn, I did it once, but a musical podcast in which he goes over everything that's hot on the charts and whatnot, what's on the mainstream and on the underground. And again, he gives his own view of the recording industry. And like I said, from a guy on the outside in, I love listening to him because he pretty much gives the insider view. And honestly, it's very educational, informative. And also, he also allows his music. If you got music that you want to play on the Bump Down, definitely research DJ King Eddie on Facebook. He also has a Smoke of Truth, as I like to call it, the no holes, no frills, check your ego at the door, blatant podcast, but it basically will give the whole cold truth. In the words of the late great Patrice O'Neal, truth is not designed to taste good, but it is to help to make you heal. And that's what the Smoke of Truth is all about. But also, you can look up DJ King Anyway to see when those podcasts are going to become live. And also, our former Facebook group, if I get that reference, which you can still join, will eventually become our Table of Bosses video vault, to where you'll be able to see all of our podcasts from there. Oh, and yes, for those that were asking about Get Bit, which is actually the third podcast I'm going to do, haven't got the segment downs yet, because like I said about Get Bit, it's going to be about all things video games, IT related, because there used to be shows that actually were helping out for, if you had computer issues, how to do certain things, how to talk about video games, where the video game industry is going, and just overall tech things that are pretty cool. There used to be shows like that, and I know there's multi-million-dollar podcasts out there, but I decided that I want to do one that just speaks of it from the blurred side, and hopefully you guys will watch it. But, which that's to be determined as far as that podcast, which I haven't started yet. But for right now, I still just have How the Frack We Got Here, which I usually do every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. And, of course, my Off Limits podcast I usually do every Saturday. But will be tomorrow as a special edition, 8 to 9 p.m., as I will have my compadre, Thomas Reed, right here with me. And we'll basically go from there. I did not mess up, Vaughn. It is I cannot say music. Music, culture, knowledge, numbers. I am almost certain that's correct. But anyway, that's all our guys. That's pretty much all our podcasts as we're trying to make this thing grow. And also, we do have YouTube pages as well. So if you look up, I Get That Reference. If you look up DJ King Anyway, and if you look up How the Frack We Got Here, if you look up Off Limits Podcast, all of those are active YouTube pages that you can like, share, and subscribe, as we try to keep all those video updates up there from there as well. And like I said, it's all about us wanting to be able to share and make this bigger than what it is. And like I said, with every How the Frack We Got Here and every Off Limits podcast, and with all our podcasts together, we're just trying to make it more entertaining. So if you like what you saw, let me know. If you didn't like it, like Mr. Dillon, he's probably going to let me know. But if there's just certain items and things that you want me to cover, or you believe that just need to be brought to light, then just let me know as well, because like I said, the whole thing about How the Frack We Got Here is about staying informed. What I mean by staying informed is, I mean that you're looking beyond the face value. You're actually going in and researching it for what it is, and then bringing it back to others to show what you found, in hopes that you're going to encourage them to do the same. Because an informative community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us Trump, and that's how the frack we got here. So again, guys, hope you all have a wonderful Mother's Day. Look forward to having the next Off Limits podcast for tomorrow. Say hi to your mom, and try not to piss her off. Aside from that, peace.